Welcome back to the preview show, folks. Very, very good fight to discuss. That's coming up this weekend in the UFC Apex. That's a lightweight clash between Rafael Fiziev and Mateus Gamrot. Me and Harry are going to go deep on that fight. A little bit of a different format here. We're not touching on all fights on the preview show going forward. We are going to handpick fights that we'll discuss ourselves. Obviously, we will go into detail on every single fight on the balance breakdown. That's every Tuesday. We're happy to do that. We're changing it up a little bit just to make these preview shows run a little bit better. We're concentrating on just 4 fights on this card. We will mention all the fights, but 4 fights we're going to mention on this, or spend maybe a little bit more focus on this card, is the main event with Rafael Fiziev, Mateus Gamrot. We have the co-main event between Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige. We've got Marina Rodriguez versus Michelle Waterson-Gomez. And we're going to look at Charles Jourdain versus Ricardo Ramos on the card as well. All main card fights. As the preview show progresses, sometimes we'll focus on 2 fights, 3 fights, 4 fights, 5 fights. If it's a damn good card, we might focus on all of them. This one, we've picked 4. We will go on like that for as long as we can. Let's get into it, Harry. A really, really cracking fight between 2 guys who have been storming up the lightweight division in Rafael Fiziev and Mateus Gamrot. 2 I would like to label as like the new breed of the lightweight division. 2 kind of not relatively newcomers at this stage. They're very experienced in the UFC, but we have a lot of fighters in the lightweight division that have been around for quite some time. And, Fiziev kind of touched on the upper echelon of the division with his defeat against Justin Gaethje. Mateus Gamrot obviously was in there with some high-level competition too. Had a defeat to Beneil Dariush when he fought the upper echelons. Picked up good wins over Arman Tsarukyan, and his last fight against Jalen Turner, a split decision, a controversial split decision. A lot of people did kind of see that for Turner. Not too egregious over that decision, but Gamrot got the win, that being said. But all roads lead to Saturday night, Harry. And this is a fascinating fight between 2 up-and-coming kind of guys that want to stake their claim in the top 5 of the lightweight division, but only one will get the push after this fight. How are you feeling about the fight itself?
Unbelievable fight. Unbelievable. There are so many facets that are possible in this fight. The big thing that I just need to see is how the range and how the actual physique of both of them. Fiziev is a shorter, stockier fighter. Gamrot a longer, taller, rangier, longer, sort of lankier fighter. Oh man, I mean, I just have so many questions going into this. So many questions. Is like, what does Fiziev's team take from the Jalen Turner win? Is there the loss? The split decision win for Jalen Turner with Mateus Gamrot's camp. We saw lots and lots of holes in Gamrot. We saw Jalen Turner able to stuff some takedowns. We saw him able to reverse some positions. We saw him able to land on the feet. We saw him be impactful. We saw him able to take Gamrot away from the rhythm in some of those rounds. And so what does Fiziev's camp do to take those things and meld them into a completely different style in Fiziev? And equally for Gamrot, I can imagine that the low ankle picks are going to be available. We saw against Justin Gaethje that pressure can hurt Fiziev. We've seen in previous fights that there are takedowns available against Fiziev. It's very hard to hold him down, but they are available. What's the game plan going to be, right? Like, I don't know. It's just flames. It's one of those fights where we can talk about it and we're going to talk about it, but I have absolutely fucking no idea what's going to actually happen on Saturday night.
And that's what makes the fight so fascinating to me as well. Like heading in there, I feel that, Fiziev is in a good kind of position here now where he was at the dinner table and he had a little bit of a taste and he got food poisoning against Justin Gaethje, and that can, either crush you or it can bring you back to the drawing board and showcase some of the holes that you had in your game. Now, that win, or that close loss, I should say, to Gaethje from Fiziev looks a hell of a lot better after what we've seen Justin Gaethje do to Dustin Poirier right now. And with Mateus Gamrot, he seems to be a guy that, you know, is counted out of most fights, but he's a guy who always seems to find a way, and he finds a way with his grappling and his pressure as well. And like you said, Fiziev did struggle with the pressure of Justin Gaethje on the feet. And I'm not sure that Gamrot can do that in the striking realm, but he can make things awkward by closing the distance and, you know, putting the pressure on and creating scrambles and creating clinch exchanges as well. But will he be good enough to kind of do it? Will Fiziev have built and grown from that loss over Gaethje, and will he stuff it? Because I can see Fiziev actually going out here and destroying Gamrot, but I can also see Gamrot going out there and picking up a very hard-nosed win and a grinding win as well. There's scenarios I look at when I'm kind of trying to analyze fights, and I try to find the end result. Like, can I see Gamrot going out there and finishing Fiziev? No, I can't. Can I see Fiziev going out there and finishing Gamrot? Yes, I can. Can I see this being a really close, tight-knit fight? Yes, I can. Can I see Gamrot winning a one-sided kind of domination with his grappling? Yes, I can. But it's all, we're not going to find out the answers to any of those questions until we actually see them go in there and we can kind of see what way the fight plays out. When you're looking at both of these guys' skill set, and you're looking at how you would like them to kind of approach their game plan on Saturday night, Harry, what would you like both of these fighters to be looking at and to kind of do in order to get the win?
Jesus.
That is a loaded question.
I think that Gamrot is the more well-rounded fighter. I think that when you go in against Arman Tsarukyan, and okay, we can argue whether he won that fight or didn't win that fight in the same vein that the Jalen Turner fight, but he certainly has patterns and he has a confidence on the feet because he's so sort of enamored with his own grappling abilities that I think that causes a level of reckless abandon, which can both be fantastic for him, but also against somebody like Rafael Fiziev can leave him open for counters. Now, if I'm Gamrot's corner, I'm asking him to just go out and enact his own game plan because he mixes things together really, really, really well. He shoots on things in a strange way. You don't often see low-level ankle picks from MMA fighters, especially not in the way that Gamrot throws them. You don't see that low single, the John Smith or whatever that American fella's name is, where you really turn the corner aggressively on that single and like collapse down at the shoulder. Those styles of grappling are quite rare and quite hard to replicate. And I think whilst I kind of agree, and I'll get to Fiziev in a second, it's quite hard to pull in people to replicate the Gamrot style because of the body type, because of the specific type of grappling, because of the specific type of entries he has. It's quite hard to bring in somebody that's going to mimic him. Whereas I think it's actually easier to bring in a really solid, stocky Thai fighter that can do some of the things that Rafael Fiziev is going to look to do. Now, if I'm Gamrot, I'm obviously looking to put him on the mat a lot, right? I'm looking to drain his gas tank. I'm looking to push him against the fence. I'm looking to make sure there's lots of lactate in his arms and his legs. I'm looking to drown him a little bit in the grappling. And then maybe if, rounds 1 and 2, they're very heavy grappling. If he's starting to gas a little by round 3, feel free to stand a little bit, accumulate some damage. Maybe we take him down again in round 4. And then in round 5, we see what's there. Now, I certainly can go on.
I agree with what you're saying, and that's the game plan that Gamrot should kind of possess and bring in to this fight. We saw kind of glimmers of that when Fiziev was in there with Rafael dos Anjos, where dos Anjos was trying to close the distance and Fiziev was able to kind of fend him off. We've seen him do that also, that was kind of the only kind of grapple heavy guy that he's been in there that wants to kind of lead with his grappling. I think it would be foolish from Gamrot to come in here and kind of get caught up straight away in a striking battle because he could get clipped early. The more powerful and more impactful striker of the two, I do believe, is Rafael Fiziev. But I do think that Gamrot can be dangerous on the feet, but I feel that danger comes at the back of his grappling. You've got to get in there and grapple straight away and put that in the back of the head or in the front of the head of Rafael Fiziev and get him thinking about the grappling, where, you know, you might see things open up on the feet for Gamrot then after that. But I do agree with it. I almost think that this should be immediately touch the gloves, find your space, safely enter into the pocket, get the takedown, and make Fiziev work from the starting bell. Is that what you're kind of saying for Gamrot and what he should be doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Gamrot, you know, like you say, it's safely enter to the takedown, because I think this is where, and this will kind of lead me on to the Fiziev thoughts, is you can't take any chances against Fiziev. You just can't. He's a demon. He's an absolute demon. And so if you give him an inch, he's going to take it. And so for Gamrot, I have no problem with him starting cagey. I have no problem with him starting to understand the patterns a little bit, understand the rhythms, and keep himself safe. And then when he notices an opportunity for him to shoot in and take the fight down, then he should absolutely do so. And I suspect we will see something similar to that. Now for Fiziev, Christ, for Fiziev, the big question I have, right, and there's a couple of big questions I have, but one of the big questions I have on Fiziev's side is how well is he going to deal with the unorthodox style of Gamrot? You mentioned, and rightly so, that Rafael dos Anjos is the only grapple-heavy guy at the elite level that he's been looking to fight, or has fought, sorry. RDA is very much a bread and butter grappler. He's going to push you against the fence. He's going to drop his level down, grab your hips, and try and take you down in a double. Or he's going to change levels in the octagon, in the open space, and he's going to drive into you, right? Gamrot doesn't do that. Now, the thing I picture in my brain is Fiziev has an ability to explode into knees, has an ability to explode into elbows, has an ability to explode into a variety of different offensive options. The thing that's in my head is that there is going to be an exchange on the feet, and Gamrot's going to look for a low single, and Fiziev is going to time it, and he's going to knee his face into the stratosphere. That's the thing that I have in my brain.
Yeah, sorry, Sean Denny, in advance. The outcome and the result of this fight is a Rafael Fiziev knockout for me. I don't know. I just keep leading down to that. I just think that he will have some difficulties, but will eventually be able to fend off the attacks and the takedown attempts from Gamrot, whether it's timing Gamrot coming in, like you said, or whether it's just slowly wearing him down, because his power does carry into the later stages of the fight as well. We've seen that in the Rafael dos Anjos fight. Talk to me about the entry that Gamrot uses. You said unorthodox, it's very unusual, but we see him shooting for that single leg and immediately wrapping around, whether it be the right leg or the left leg, straight away. So you're shooting in on the hips, you're looking to try and trip and take the weight. You're basically trying to take a guy down by anchoring one of the legs and giving him nothing to kind of be able to kind of balance on, where the only thing you can do is fall down. He does it so excellently and so quickly. You're going to do a better job than me in breaking that kind of movement down and that kind of entry and takedown down. That has worked ever so well for Gamrot. It's almost impossible to train against, and he goes for it every single fight and is almost successful in every fight with that particular entry into the single leg.
Yeah, so there's two main entrances that he uses from. One's crossbody, and one's when their opponent is standing in a similar stance, in an opposite stance to them. Sorry. What he likes to do is he often throws a right hand and he ducks under the right hand, but he throws it as if he's throwing it. It's a very real feint, and then he allows himself to change levels drastically, and he ankle picks at the low leg, and as he ankle picks, he wraps his wrist and his arm all the way around the foot, and he turns the corner immediately. So then he's behind the opponent, and he then starts to lean his shoulder weight into the back of the calf and the back of the knee of the opponent. That then causes the leg to bend, which means it can't turn, right? The person then can't square up with you because their leg is bent. It's very, very hard when you have a wedge in the hand and you have the shoulder pressing down on the back of the calf to turn. Gamrot will then often just take whatever reaction he gets. If they try and limp leg their leg out, he might climb up the leg and drop them. If they start to stuff his hands and stuff his head, he'll just reach for the far leg and dump them that way. If they try and aggressively turn in, he will follow them round and continue to put pressure on the back of the calf. There are lots of reactions that he has that. I think that's why it's hard to train against. Because if you showed a guy, let's say you got a good grappler in your gym, and you say, sure, look, can you have a look at this and try and replicate this for me? I'm sure that he can get the mechanics down, but it's the timing, as you mentioned. That's the most difficult thing to get a read on. It's not necessarily the fundamentals of why the movement is working or putting yourself in a situation where you're deep in the movement, because he has spent so much time there that he's got this reaction database and he has a counter to those reactions and he can flow through them immediately. And so my thought for Fiziev in terms of countering those things is similar to what Grasso did for Shevchenko. Is you're going to have to probably just admit that you're going to concede some takedowns. But when you concede some takedowns, is what happens after that. Volkanovski did the same thing against Islam Makhachev. He knew that the entries were coming, and he knew that he probably didn't have the ability to stop the entries, and he probably didn't have the ability to stop the resultant takedown. But what happens after that? Can he create a scramble? Can he get shin pins inside? Can, as Gamrot's taking him down, can he get shoulder posts? Can he break the posture of Gamrot? Can he run his way to the cage and use the cage to get up? Can he attack from guard in such a way that Gamrot is overwhelmed by what's happening underneath him, makes a mistake that allows Fiziev to get up? These are the questions I have. I do think there is an opportunity that as Fiziev starts to get a read on the timing, remember these are elite level fighters, right? They're reading each other all the time. I do think there's an ability for a knee. I do think there's an ability for an elbow. I do think there's an ability for Fiziev to start switching stances when he feels that timing coming and set Gamrot up.
That's it. I was going to mention the switching of stances is something that, Fiziev can do to kind of maybe throw Gamrot off for some of those single leg entries as well. You're forcing Gamrot to reset as soon as you reset as well and switch your stance. And we've seen Fiziev do that in lots of other fights. I expect to see a lot of stance switching in this fight as well. The 5 rounds, I kind of think it kind of favors Fiziev a little bit more than it would favor Gamrot in this instance. It's why I think it does is because I think, those entries are going to become a little bit more labored as the fight goes on, and the reads can be kind of got a little bit more easier by Fiziev, and he can time those shots as well. But I mean, that could work in Gamrot's favor if he is successful in keeping Fiziev down as well and making him work on the mat. That might kind of take away from the gas tank of Rafael Fiziev as well. And look, it's just a fantastic fight. I mean, people will want to come out and berate the Apex shows, and that's your own opinion, but you do not want to miss a fight like this on Saturday night. It's as simple as that. These two guys are elite level. They're a new breed of mixed martial artists, and this is going to be a wonderful fight. Any final thoughts before we move on to the co-main event, Harry?
Yeah, a couple. I think the one thing I'd say about Gamrot, you said you can't see him getting a finish. I can see him subbing Fiziev because I don't think it will happen. Right? I don't think it will happen. But to throw it out as a possibility, I think is important, because this is a guy who, okay, he lost to Gary Tonin, fine. But this is a guy that made his way to ADCC by winning.
He's an animal.
Absolutely.
But he couldn't do it against Jalen Turner.
Sure. And I think Jalen Turner is a good grappler in his own right. I think the interesting part to me in this fight, if we do see long periods of exchanges on the ground, is Fiziev submission aware enough? He can be positionally aware enough, that's fine. But Gamrot, if he's given enough time on the mat, will start to open up baiting options, and he'll start to look for a variety of different submissions. He's not just a take the back and choke kind of guy. He's absolutely a guy that's going to look for things like kimuras and things like leg attacks to open up other things. So whilst I agree with your point, I'm not sure I see it. I think it's a possibility. I think the other...
I absolutely think it may be unfair of me to say. I think it's a possibility. I really struggle to kind of see it happen in this fight, but that's because I really think very highly of Fiziev as a fighter. I really like him, and I'm excited to see what he can showcase after that loss, after tasting a defeat to an upper echelon guy, working on the gym, see what he can bring in here. Your final thoughts on this fight, please, Harry?
Yeah, and I'll just say this and then we'll move on. I think the interesting wrinkle too for me is the strength of schedule, right? We have seen Gamrot go out and he fights Jeremy Stevens, whatever. Diego Ferreira, good fighter. Arman Saryukin, unbelievable. Benil Dariush, unbelievable. Jalen Turner, really, really good fighter. Whereas you look at the strength of schedule of Rafael Fiziev, Alex White, whatever. Diakese, okay, good fighter. Moicano, good fighter. Bobby Green, whatever. Brad Brodell, solid fighter, but not at the level. Rafael dos Anjos is the first real test. Goes out and performs fantastically. And then Justin Gaethje. I'm really interested to see how those strength of schedules come together and sort of build this fight.
Normally, I would agree with that, but I feel that his performance against Gaethje and how close he was to winning that fight, and the level of performance we've seen from Justin Gaethje after that fight, fills me with a little bit of promise over Fiziev. But like I said,
my point is that Fiziev is built, and this is his time coming.
Right. Yeah, I get you. I misinterpreted that. I apologize. So yeah, Gamrot has been at this stage before. Yeah, I completely get what you're saying, and this is going to be a good one. Like I said, don't miss out on this fight. Even if you don't want to bother watching the rest of this card, tune in. You owe it to yourselves as mixed martial arts fans to check out this. Bryce Mitchell returns in the co-main event, Harry, against Dan Ige. 50k Dan Ige, striker versus grappler, kind of a stylistic matchup here. I mean, there's not too much analysis that we can give on this fight. It's an intriguing fight to see what Bryce Mitchell brings to the table after his first loss. Obviously going through the motions right now outside the cage, but Dan Ige is a tough test, and you're going to have to be at the top of your game if you're going to take out someone like with the caliber of Dan Ige.
Agreed. I mean, yeah, I can't really give you much analysis other than that Bryce Mitchell is going to try and take him down with the really, really nice wrestling style that he has. Dan Ige's fine on the ground, but we know where his strength is. His strength is in his hands and in his footwork and in his head movement.
And his jab.
And in his jab, exactly. And I think the jab is going to play a significant part in this fight. If he can force Bryce Mitchell to shoot defensively rather than offensively, then it gives him more time to start stuffing the takedowns and working through the reactions. But I don't know. I mean,
it's a tricky one. I think that Bryce Mitchell should be probably trying to use Dan Ige's jab against him in this fight. And I feel, I had the pleasure of being at UFC 289 and getting to see Dan up close and personal cage side. And that jab is a thing of beauty when he can get it going. Like Nate Landwehr couldn't get going at all. Couldn't get past the jab of Dan Ige. And if you let him kind of establish that jab, it's going to be a long night for you. Now, what Bryce Mitchell will have to do is kind of just counter that jab and come in under it with takedowns. And he's going to have to kind of gauge that distance. And you can use someone's jab against them, where you can put yourself into a position where, Dan Ige will feel he can land a jab, but instead of eating the jab, you're dropping in under that and you're shooting for the hips and you're getting the takedown. And then Dan Ige has the predicament of either stuffing the takedown or trying to get back up. I feel for Dan Ige, where we said that the important thing for Fiziev, Harry, was, what happens after the takedown. I think in this fight, it's going to be more important that Dan Ige doesn't get into that position and doesn't find he's back on the mat, because I feel that he is going to have a bit more difficulty with a guy like Bryce Mitchell and how strong he is in his top game to get back up. So I feel Dan Ige should be coming in here with a sprawl and brawl tactic. I think he doesn't want to get caught with his hips square in the center of the cage. Sometimes we kind of kind of suggest not to fight behind the threshold. I don't think that that's going to be the worst idea for Dan Ige in this fight, whereas I feel he will be better capable of defending the takedown with the help of the cage rather than being caught with a double or a single leg in the middle of the octagon where it's going to be harder for him to get up.
I agree. I mean, we saw the sequences that Movsarevloyev was able to move through, and I think that Bryce Mitchell is a better grappler than Movsarevloyev, and so, yeah, I think I agree entirely that I would probably say to skirt the tram line rather than be behind it.
Yes, yeah.
If he can skirt it, then as he sprawls, he can literally use his feet against the cage to keep as a post and a frame. But yeah, I think your analysis is spot on. I really do.
Yeah, and I said not much to discuss or analyze in this fight. It'll be interesting to see what Bryce Mitchell brings to the table and if Dan Ige can kind of get over this hurdle and push himself up the rankings in the 145-pound division. And we should move on to the next one, or unless you have any final thoughts, are we good to go?
Let's go.
Let's go. Marina Rodriguez, Michelle Rodriguez, Fast and the Furious. What are we talking about here? Marina Rodriguez versus Michelle Waterson-Gomez. An easy mistake that anyone can make. At one stage, Harry, we were calling Marina Rodriguez the next thing in the 115-pound division. It hasn't worked out for her that well. 2 losses to Amanda Lemos and Virna Jandiroba leads her to this fight with Michelle Waterson-Gomez. And it's a good stylistic matchup, to be fair, for Marina Rodriguez here against Waterson-Gomez, who just about gets the job done or just about doesn't get the job done in most of her recent fights. She's 3 losses in a row herself, and a loss a couple of fights ago to Marina Rodriguez as well. So it's strange that we're running this one back, but it makes all the sense in the world for Marina Rodriguez to take a fight like this, coming off the back of 2 defeats. And obviously Michelle Rodriguez lost to Luana Pinheiro and Amanda Lemos before those defeats, or that defeat to Marina Rodriguez. And yeah, I mean, what do you think about this matchup? Do you agree with what I said, and that it's probably a bad idea for Michelle Waterson-Gomez and a good idea for Marina Rodriguez, given where both of these women are situated in their careers?
This should be a stomping by Marina Rodriguez. It
Yeah.
really should be. Like, losing to Amanda Lemos in the way that she did, there's no shame in that, right? Like there's not a lot of shame in that. You get finished by Lemos. Okay, she really didn't perform well in that fight, but fine. These things happen. Virna Jandiroba is somebody I've been high on for a long time, and is somebody that's starting to put things together. And when she gets into her grappling chains, she looks great. But just go through the couple of fights before then. Split decision to Carla Esparza in 2020 when she was knocking on the door of a title shot. Amanda Hebas finishes her. Michelle Waterson-Gomez just decimates her. Beats Mackenzie Dern. That's a win that's aged well. Yan Jourdain, that's a win that's aged exceedingly well. Okay, it's a split decision, but it's a win all the same. Then you go out and you drop those 2 losses. Fine. Michelle Waterson-Gomez, on the other hand, loses to JJ in 2019. Fine. Loses a split decision to Carla Esparza, wins a split decision against Angela Hill because that's the way you win against Angela Hill. Then she loses to Marina Rodriguez. Then she gets guillotined by Amanda Lemos. Fine, these things happen. But Luana Pinheiro, that's not a fight that you should be losing if you are anywhere near the prime of your career. Now, both of these ladies, 37 and 36 years of age. For both of these, that you are desperate for a win here. Marina Rodriguez, if she's going to have one more crack at a run at some form of title contention, it has to happen right now. And I think it has to happen with a dominant finish over Michelle Waterson-Gomez. A decision is not going to be enough to vault you into a position where the next fight is a massive one. And for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, I think if she loses this, we're done here.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I feel a loss for Michelle Waterson-Gomez and maybe even a win. I'm getting the vibes from what I've seen with her skill set and the way it's declining, as it happens with all fighters towards the end of her career. And somewhat that can be said about Marina Rodriguez as well. But this may be the last dance for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, and if it is, fair play to her. We'll talk about that on the breakdown show. I don't really like saying that, but I kind of getting those vibes. Certainly, a loss would mean only 1 win in 7 for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, and that's that's leading down the rocky road to retirement, Harry. And there's not too much more to be said about that either. But there's plenty to be said about the last fight that we're going to discuss on this card. After I do this, we'll give a quick run through of the rest of the fights on the card. But we're going to focus our attention on Charles Jourdain versus Ricardo Ramos, a fight that will open up the main card. And you know what we say about main card openers, Harry. They always deliver. And I expect this one to be the same as well. Do you?
Screamer of a fight. Absolute screamer. I need to know where Ricardo Ramos is, right? I just need to know. You dropping a fight to Zubara Takugov is, I hear you. Zubara either turns up and looks great or he turns up and looks awful. And then you go out and you beat Danny Chavez, who really shouldn't have been in there with you. Dropping weight to Austin Lingo, that fight doesn't go ahead. I think we would have learned a little bit here, but it's a big step up against Charles Jourdain, who, okay, you lose to Nathaniel Wood, these things happen. You lose to Shane Burgos, these things happened when Shane Burgos was Shane Burgos. The Kron Gracie performance was an IQ test for Charles Jourdain, and he passed it with absolutely flying colors. And so, I think Charles Jourdain has the range, has the awareness on the ground, has the ability to use his tools more intelligently, I think I will say, than Ricardo Ramos. But Ricardo Ramos hits very, very hard, loves the spinning back fist, and is wild. And it feels as though in the past, those are fights that Charles Jourdain has got sort of caught up in and allowed to take him away. And then he's decided, fuck it, I'm just scrapping. And then he loses those fights.
And that's it. It's like, why you say it was an IQ test against Kron Gracie is because he didn't get drawn into a kind of a war, but he also didn't get drawn into the grappling of someone like Kron Gracie as well. So, I mean, showed some signs there. And I mean, we could say about both of these guys when they show up and they're on song, they're dangerous, but they have been guilty of not always showing up. Now, Charles Jourdain always shows up, but doesn't always fight with the highest level of intelligence once he gets in there, can get drawn into a war. And I don't think that this is the fight for him to get drawn into a war. I think he has the technical ability to get Ramos out of there. Would you kind of agree with that sentiment?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. I don't know if I've seen enough of Ramos at 145 against really solid competition to make a decision on that yet. But I think it's going to be fireworks. Whatever happens, I do think it's going to be fireworks. I don't trust Charles Jourdain to not get drawn into a war. I just don't trust him. And Ricardo Ramos is coming for a war. And I'm very excited. Very, very excited.
Absolutely. Let me take you through the rest of the card. We've talked about the top 3 fights. Fourth fight and second. I mean, the only main card fight we didn't discuss per Brian Battle versus AJ Fletcher in the 170-pound division. They will go there. On the prelim sections, Miles Johns versus Dan Argueta. That is going to be a good fight. I'm really excited for that. Tim Means versus Andre Fijallo. Fijallo will fight well for round 1 and likely get finished in round 2 or round 3 by the Dirty Bird. Jacob Malkoun versus Cody Brundage to a battle of the big heads there in the 185-pound division. Jake Collier versus Muhammad Usman. Your standard mid-card heavyweight fight is down on the third fight of the prelims. I mean, yeah. Mizuki Inoue will take on Hannah Goldie in 115-pound division. And Montserrat Rendon at 5-0 will make her UFC debut against Tamaris Vidal. Out of all those bouts that I've mentioned, Harry, does anything else briefly stand out to you?
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Jacob Malkoun in like his third fight or whatever. He was doing really interesting grappling things. Cody Brundage hits hard and grapple himself, but has the IQ of a doorknob. Fiallo, if he can finish Tim Means in a round, grand. If he won't, he'll get stopped. And I agree with you entirely that Miles Jones Dan Argueta is a fantastic fight. Brian Battle, AJ Fletcher will probably be fun. Brian Battle might just have, I know he has less fights, but he feels like he fights like a more experienced fighter. AJ Fletcher's been knocked around the place by Dustin Poirier for a long time, and we'll see how that goes. Fair play to both men.
Absolutely. We'll cover all of these fights in great detail. As always, the balance breakdown next Tuesday at BJJ_Harry Powell at O'Neill MMA. Until then, enjoy the fights this weekend and look after yourselves. We'll talk to you soon.